Welcome back to VMworld Live. I'm John Troyer. We are very proud to have with us today two more guests, Jay Kidd from NetApp and Vittorio Viarengo from VMware. So gentlemen, welcome to VMworld Live.
Hi, John.
Here in Copenhagen. So today, NetApp had some new announcements about their Secure Multi-Tenancy reference architecture. And so we're going to talk about them for a little bit for a few minutes here with Jay and Vittorio. So Jay, tell us a little bit about what is Secure Multi-Tenancy and kind of what some of the areas that you're announcing these enhancements on today.
Yeah, sure. It's about 9 months ago, the three companies, VMware, Cisco, and NetApp, came together, and we defined a reference architecture to build out scalable, shared virtual infrastructure. And really, it's a blueprint for how to put together the technologies of the three companies in the most efficient, best way. Now, with these set of enhancements, we've extended that architecture. It was always designed to be extendable and open. We've extended the availability technologies in it with some disaster recovery capabilities. We've extended the manageability of it, extended the level of assurance and quality of service or class of service, and also extended some of the security attributes of it as well.
So Secure Multi-Tenancy, as we talk about cloud computing, and as we talk about people moving their data into either a private cloud internally at an enterprise, or a hybrid or public cloud at a service provider, it seems like data management, data integrity is an important part of one of the concerns that people are having in this journey. Can you talk a little bit about, is that your motivator for calling it Secure Multi-Tenancy and the motivator for the architecture?
Well, we were getting a lot of feedback from customers as they consolidated infrastructure to build a large shared infrastructure, not a scared infrastructure, shared infrastructure. One of the concerns they had was, how do I assure that I've isolated one tenant or one application set, or it could be one department within an organization, or it could be a tenant or a client for a service provider. How do I really know that they're isolated from each other? And so the Secure Multi-Tenancy is really the essence of that. How do I consolidate infrastructure for the economics of sharing, but assure the security by being able to logically isolate it? And the attributes within the storage, the network, and the virtual machines enable that type of isolation.
Great. Well, let's get into some of the elements then of SMT. So security, you mentioned, we talked about, security is in the headline there.
You got it, yeah.
And you talked about security. So what are some of the enhancements in the security aspects of SMT?
So we started out with security being around separation and really being able to isolate the storage containers one from each other with the multi-store capability in NetApp. There also were security with VLANs applied through the stack. Now with the enhancements right now, we're extending the vShield capabilities within VMware to isolate VMs within an ESX server from each other more strongly, and also deeper isolation and more of the traditional security applications, intrusion detection, incorporated into a set of Cisco safe technologies in the stack. So there are things which existed outside of SMT, but have now been incorporated into the architecture.
And then at the data layer, there's also separation, though.
There is. NetApp has a capability called multi-store, which lets you take a consolidated large-scale storage controller and partition it logically into separate virtual controllers, very similar to virtual machines on a server.
Okay. So Vittorio, as we're going to talk a little bit more about the virtualization journey as we go along here in this segment. How important is security and addressing security concerns and compliance concerns and process concerns like that as people move along through different steps of the journey?
So what we found by interviewing our customers and listening to them is that in the first phase of the journey, everything happens really below the radar, and IT virtualizes the assets that they own, like file, print, and that type of stuff. And once they get comfortable with the technology, they just go for it. But when you reach 25-30% and you start to virtualize business applications, then we need architecture like this, because one customer told me, I bought this server, I might need it, why should I share it? So that's the attitude, right? They're so used to buy a piece of hardware and storage and then run their whole application on top of it and owning the entire infrastructure that the moment you start sharing, you need to show that you can actually guarantee the encapsulation of the application. And when multiple applications run side by side, they don't run into each other from a security perspective and so on and so forth. So it's an absolute milestone, an absolute requirement in stage 2 of the journey to move through the journey and make the application owners ultimately comfortable that this stuff works.
Well, Jay, is this talking to the application owners? I guess this is something that IT infrastructure can share with their application owners as an assurance.
They can. You know, there's an old adage that sharing is easy when everyone has their own stuff. But the key thing here is creating the perception to the application owner that they have their own stuff. And as customers have gone through this journey, I've been asking this question for 3 years of a customer. Do you default a new application onto a virtual machine or a physical machine? And now it's almost universally a virtual machine. But there still is that concern that the IT owners have to convince the application owners that even in a virtual machine, you've got your own dedicated stack. No one can interfere with what you've got going on.
And it is a matter also of maturity of the IT organization, right? So today there are more mature IT organizations they just do it and they figure things out. Sometimes what they revert to doing is to dedicate a whole cluster to a set of applications that are kind of homogeneous, say an SAP installation or something like that. And I think as the leaders in the industries, as we bring this solution to market, we're going to allow it to really to make it available for everybody and make it easy and remove the guesswork of the architecture. So hey, here's how you do it, and you're guaranteed that the applications are isolated and secured.
Gotcha. Well, let's go with that. So this is a reference architecture. What was the process of coming to defining this as a reference architecture, not as a kit in a box, right, or a set of real product encoded, without flexibility?
Right. Well, when we started this project with the 3 companies, we realized that we are at the beginning of this journey in terms of what technology will be applied, how will be applied, and what customers were looking for was guidance on how to incorporate the technologies that existed, what NetApp had, what Cisco had, what VMware had, into an architecture that they could tune and optimize for their environment. What they didn't want was a rigid, single solution that you could just turn on and that was the only way it worked, and if you needed something a little bit bigger, you needed a whole different architecture. So this set of reference technologies with specific guidelines for how to configure them, but also scales from very small to very large with essentially the same components. So it's much more flexible, much more open. One of the other critical aspects of a reference design is it brings integration partners into the equation. So much of the deployment of virtual infrastructure is done by local integration partners or global integrators. And any solution which cuts the integrators out of the equation and tries to perform integration just for the end customer is going to alienate the partners and take them out of the script. We think the integrators are an essential part of getting this to work successfully in customers, so we want to include the integrators in this whole approach.
Let's go back up and talk about the actual SMT architecture as a whole and some of these enhancements for just a sec. You talked about security, and you also talked about availability and manageability. Can you talk to what the enhancements are on that side as well?
Yeah, for availability, VMware has had a set of technologies for the site recovery manager, being able to basically fail over a set of VMs to another site. NetApp has had a set of technologies for mirroring data and creating clones and basically performing DR. Those technologies have existed, but in the initial reference architecture, they weren't incorporated in terms of how to design it in. We've added them to the architecture. We've also added manageability capabilities in that now the vCloud Director and vCenter or vCloud Director to administer large infrastructure is now integrated with the storage management tools that NetApp offers. So you can manage the storage directly from vCloud Director. Plus, we recognize that there's always customers that may have a larger scale, a higher level data center orchestration tool, and they want to be able to manage the servers, the storage, the network from that tool. So we have APIs and web services interfaces to allow integration of that management up into the higher level orchestration layer.
Gotcha. That's certainly a trend that I'm seeing. Infrastructure as code, right? Everything, every piece of hardware, every piece of software better have an API, better be manageable at many different layers, better be controllable at many different layers, because there's not a guy walking into the data center and pulling out a machine anymore one at a time.
Screwdrivers don't scale.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yes, you want a single pane of glass to be able to manage as much as possible.
Yeah. So this has been out in the first version of this reference architecture has been out in the market for 9 months or so.
Right.
We've been talking with customers, all 3 companies. I mean, what have you seen? How have you seen people react to this? Maybe what are some of the use cases that you've seen people have?
Yeah, there's been a couple of examples, and I'll let Vittorio pile on as well. We have some very large customers, customers such as T-Systems, who are a very large service provider in Europe, deploying a lot of the elements of the architecture. They were actually doing it ahead of the reference design, and we learned a lot from them in building the reference design. We also have some small accounts, a little company called DCI. I don't even know what the initials stand for. But they're a service provider for regional banks in the U.S., and they can stand up the applications necessary to run a regional bank. And clearly, if you're going to run multiple regional banks on a shared infrastructure, there are regulatory requirements, separation of those banks, security of the data is absolutely essential. But these banks are not IT shops. They'd love to just run their IT as a service from somebody else, and DCIs have the booming business doing exactly that.
And to me, if you zoom out and you look at categories of customers in different stages of the journey, a lot of our customers now are stage 1 pushing stage 2 or going through stage 3, and this type of solution will, in the same way as vMotion and some of those technology accelerated the first phase of the journey, these are the things that people need to accelerate the second phase of the journey, where it's all about manageability and quality of service.
Manageability and quality of service.
Yeah.
Vittorio, are you seeing that this is both? It's interesting as we get more into cloud, we're talking more about service providers and enterprises kind of dealing with the same sorts of issues. Are you seeing the same sorts of concern there?
Yeah, absolutely. When you start sharing infrastructure across multiple applications, you're actually operating an internal service, right? An internal cloud. And so some of the challenges are the same. And one thing that eventually is going to make the difference after they get the architecture right and deploy the solution is to change the processes and the organizational structure to operate it as.
Yeah. And now that's a whole different level of reference architecture that you need. Well, guys, thanks for coming on. Let's see, there's a blog post where they can read more about these enhancements. So, I mean, Jay, any sort of take-home message that you want people to know? I mean, it sounds like this blueprint idea or guideline idea is really powerful.
Yeah, I think that, as Vittorio talks about so eloquently, this is a journey that our customers are on. And the idea is to provide a roadmap, provide some guidance for how to get there, but there's only one way. There's a lot of choices to come in this set of technologies, but providing some guidance on how to get started is a critical value.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, guys, thanks for coming on VMworld Live.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.